is really related to our first session. That is where the theme of this conference, Inculcating Professionalism among Sri Lankan Youth through Educational Reform, Empowering Youth Rights. It's another new word, youth rights. We are talking about women rights, child rights, now youth rights. Good.
Good afternoon, Honorable Chair, Dr. Pratibha Mahanamaheva, the Dean Faculty of Law, the members of the panel, the distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, and the majority youth audience that I see just in front of me. And I think this topic would be really, really interesting to you all. And my research is on inculcating professionalism among Sri Lankan youth through educational reforms, empowering youth rights, a legacy in retrospect. And in my research, I'll be following this order: the national implementation, the Sri Lankan policy alternatives to empower youth rights in professionalism, and secondly, the national education policy propounding professionalism, and moving next to the international jurisprudence, the regional action plans, and the discourse within the youth conferences. To start off with my introduction, the United Nations organization has recognized 1.8 billion of the world's population consists of youth, which they have made age demarcation from year 15 to 24. And whereas the Sri Lankan population, the 23% of the Sri Lankan population consists of youth, which we have demarcated the age group from 15 to 29. And the spirit of this community should be an essential concern of a country, for the reason being that they are the future generation of our country, and we need to take the innovative ideas, their strengths, to develop for the sustainable development agenda of the country. And accordingly, it is expected to empower these youth with enlightening them with knowledge, sharpening their skills, identifying their abilities, career guidance, and most importantly, the research focus professionalism with leadership skills considered with self-confidence, and a code of ethics to inculcate professionalism. And the objectives of my research is to enhance the respect towards the professional standards, followed by a code of ethics that needs to be coming to being to enhance the professional skills of the youth, and which needs to be reformed in the educational system of Sri Lanka. And secondly, to expand the scope and application of the policy alternatives that are already existing in Sri Lanka, which is the National Youth Policy, into a youth charter, which would make a binding effect for the authorities to follow it more effectively. And thirdly, to render justice and equity in retrospect of youth rights on behalf of the Sri Lankan youth community, while formulating a background for further research for all other the youth delegates who are really into this subject, and to all who are interested. And this research would go on to emphasize the current policies, the implementation with a comparative analysis on the regional and international initiatives, as I mentioned before, and how we could benefit the sustainable development of the sustainable development agenda in Sri Lanka by taking the opinions of the enthusiastic youth. And to the first one, the Sri Lankan policy alternatives. As an existing youth policy, we have the National Youth Policy, which came into force very recently, last year on the 14th of February 2014. And this was a major initiative by the Ministry of Youth Affairs and Skills Development of Sri Lanka, with the objective to address the youth problems and challenges they face in the society at large, and which is drafted with the intention of considering youth as a constituency with certain rights and obligations, which is not much recognized internationally as well. And this particular area, I should say, is a developing area in human rights, and there is a very comprehensive discourse going on domestically, regionally, and internationally. And Chapter 2 of the National Youth Policy has mentioned three main pillars, and as one of the main three pillars, empowering youth is one of their main three pillars, and accordingly promoting high standards of professionalism and integrity by all involved in youth work is one of their key strategies. And for that, they have made their concern and they have made their attention upon special youth groups, the unemployed youth, the youth from war-affected communities, excluded, discriminated and exploited youth groups, youth at different educational levels, young women, rural youth, urban low-income youth, youth in conflict with the law, and estate sector youth and differently abled youth who need special attention from society, and whereas we can empower these youth to make them contribute to the sustainable development agenda of a country, and in order to make it more effective, we can come up with a youth charter going beyond the thresholds that we have right now currently, the National Youth Policy. And when focusing on the national educational policies that we have in Sri Lanka, which make their concern upon professionalism, it's said in most of the national curriculum books, if you go through, you would see in their objectives they mention that they want to encourage and inculcate professionalism among school children in the guidelines. But then again, there is a small doubt as to whether these particular guidelines or objectives are really implemented in the current context. And accordingly, since these policies are not really implemented within the current context, according to my research, I have discovered that it's much more suitable to go for a youth charter which would implement it more effectively, and that I would prove in the slides to come as to how the other jurisdictions have taken steps to implement it more effectively. And in the progression of ethical standards of the students to interact in diversity, integrity, self-confidence, responsibility, and the potential to face different issues at any given situation. Actually, when we see certain personalities, even when they are molded as adults, we see they are very much reluctant to face a problem, or else very much reluctant to go just in front of their head and to convey a message or to convey any difficulty that they have. And sometimes some people, they tend not to interact with others with different interests. They do not have that potential to interact with persons with different interests. So accordingly, to make a personality a very successful, to mold a successful personality who has capabilities of making his or her contribution towards the sustainable development agenda, professionalism is very much important. And youth prominently highlights their necessity of having professional education. And this is, as you can see in the slide, it is one of the surveys that have been conducted by the National Human Development Report, under the National Human Development Report 2014. This is the survey which has conducted in 2013, whereas the youth have made their opinion stating that they really wanted to have professional education, whereas in Sri Lanka we do not actually get opportunities to do part-time jobs for the school children, whereas in other jurisdictions we do see that they from their young age itself start doing part-time jobs, and they have some sort of exposure to the society than the local youth population in Sri Lanka. And as we come across on the opinions of the Asian youth delegates at the World Conference on Youth 2014, there was a special forum for the Asian youth delegates, and according to their ideas, they're actually proposing to have the summer camps concept, which is most frequently conducted in European countries, whereas the youth are given training on leadership skills and to most of the aspects of professionalism, apart from the skills that are given. So, and this research identifies that in order to mold a disciplined youth with the aspects and the standards of professionalism, a code of ethics in the national level needs to be implemented. And as I've gone through the research and as I've come to understand a very important model from Australia, the Australian Victorian model, where they emphasize upon encouraging internships, apprenticeships, and other vocational training and skills development for youth at school level. And as I just came across a situation where I really got to know about from an Australian citizen itself, that they say that the youth are given a certificate from the school itself to go and work as in to have part-time jobs. So they have opportunities like that. I think it would be really great if we also could come up with a mechanism like that to uplift the skills and to inculcate professionalism standards in the Sri Lankan youth from the school days itself. Because we know even after O-levels and even after A-levels, there is a huge vacation for our school children. So during that period of time, they actually can commit themselves doing a part-time job like that. And also, the Australian Victorian model makes special concern and reference to UDHR and CRC, the Child Rights Convention, and it defines a code of ethical practice is a document developed by a body of practitioners to provide an agreed framework and a set of values for professional practice. It provides a frame of reference in which to develop ethical and safe practice. And the Youth Council of Victoria said it's a living document. The Youth Council goes on signifying that Australian Victorian model is a living document which is really practically that could be implemented in a country. And it also reflects that the history and evolution of the youth work profession in Victoria, and adapts the Youth Affairs Council of Western Australia's Code of Ethics and the United Kingdom National Youth Agency's Ethical Conduct. And they also goes on to emphasize that this particular model will be applicable to ages from 12 to 25 and also to age brackets of other groups. And moving on to the international jurisprudence steering professionalism to empower youth rights through educational reforms. Article 14(1)(g) of the Sri Lankan Constitution, I would like to quote it first and foremost before going to other international conventions. It says that the freedom to engage by himself or in association with others in any lawful occupation, profession, trade, business or enterprise. However, in order to engage in a profession in a very successful manner, a code of discipline followed with professionalism is very important, as I have discovered in my research. And accordingly, Article 26(1) and 26(2) of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights states, in Article 26(1), technical and professional education shall be made generally available. In Article 26(2), it states that education shall be directed to the full development of human personality, which is a very much important thing that I've emphasized in the research, and to the strengthening of respect for human rights and fundamental freedoms, and it shall promote understanding, tolerance, and friendship among all nations, racial or religious groups, and shall further the activities of the United Nations for the maintenance of peace. And apart from those worldly recognized international conventions, we have the African Youth Charter, which goes on to include the professionalism aspects, which is very much similar to the Sri Lankan jurisdiction following the Roman Dutch law, and the Ibero-American National Rights of Youth, the Convention on the Rights of Youth, and finally the discourse within the youth conferences, the Colombo Declaration on Youth, which was incorporated last year, which is the outcome document, have specifically mentioned the education which is followed by professionalism, and it is now in the ongoing process of implementing regionally and internationally, even at the United Nations General Assembly. And to wind up my presentation, I would like, according to my conclusion is that we have to come up with a youth charter which has a binding effect rather than the policy alternatives, because most of the time the authorities tend not to make it huge, make it very much important with the policy alternatives, And a charter, in my perspective, according to research, is very much important. And I would like to conclude my presentation that history repeats itself, because we know in Sri Lanka, in a particular era, there was a time where we had a very radical phase within the youth. So in order to prevent such occurrences, I think my research would be a very good contribution. And thank you.
When you are citing the objectives of a research, you have to be focused and specific. Most of the objectives, it's very broad. So, in a thesis, normally we use academic language, and before looking anything, we'll see the objective. So, you have to correct that into specific and more focus. But the content is very good, because there is a debate. I think Ms. Kamini also support for this debate, the age of the youth. I don't know. So she mentioned age limit. We can have a debate on that when we start. But different countries, they go different ages with youth. I don't know from where. I think UN Charter, you have taken it. And the other thing, this industrial training, most of the universities now they give industrial training. You know, our university also, full 1 year you work with lawyers and legal firms. So these are some of the aspects where we have seen, but I agree with one that after GC, O-level and A-level, lot of students, there is no way, so that policy is very important. But be very careful when you are taking the Australian model, the culture is different. There is individualism. Sri Lanka, India, Nepal, collectivism. So there can be certain limitations when you are applying that model 100% to Sri Lanka. So please go through the cultural, social factors. Australia, New Zealand, Canada, you can compare because they are individualism. So collectivism, you have to be a little bit careful. Now our final